Worked as a teacher at my old school and found out the principal who expelled me years ago had covered up something that could have saved another student's life. And now I was the one who could expose the truth without losing everything. I came back to Lincoln High like a stranger in my own history. Same smell of stale books and cafeteria food, same cracked floors, same faded posters on the wall reminding students to reach higher. But everything seemed smaller now, like I'd grown up beyond the place, but it remained the same. I had no idea that taking this teaching position here would mess with my head like this. The first day I walked into my classroom, room 212, I saw the same busted windows, the same grimy cabinets of a decade before. I just stood there for a moment, frozen, just letting the import of it all soak in. This was the school where they threw me out. I mean, who goes back to where they got thrown out, right? But I had a job I needed. I had to start over. It felt like perhaps the world was giving me some kind of odd second chance. My mom had begged me not to do it, told me it would stir things up. But I told her that I wasn't 17 anymore, that I could do it. I lied. Everything was okay on the outside. The students had tolerated me, or at least accepted me, which was a miracle for high school students. I kept my head down, remained focused with lesson plans, smiled at colleagues like everything is okay here. Then I saw him, Principal Easton, the man who signed the paper that changed my whole life. His face hadn't altered much, still wore that rigid, thin-lipped smile like he was holding something back. I froze on my feet when I saw him in the hallway. He didn't flinch, just nodded at me like we were long-lost friends meeting again. Like I wasn't the girl who was expelled for conduct unbecoming. Like he didn't ruin my entire senior year with the scratch of his pen. I wanted to scream at him, but I didn't. I flirted with him, said, "Good morning, Principal Easton," and walked away. My palms were sweating, but I just kept walking, fast. That night I couldn't sleep. All the old rubbish came back. The gossip, the way that kids would murmur about me, how my friends suddenly stopped texting me back in the dead of night. I was the scandal. The girl who was in trouble for breaking into a classroom one night with a boy that I ultimately didn't even end up with. What they never got was that it wasn't like that. We were talking. That was it. Both of us had been going through stuff, and we just needed to hide out for a bit. But one person complained, and I was suddenly inappropriate, and his father was on the school board. I was just myself. My parents were heartbroken. I didn't get to walk at graduation, got my diploma in the mail. That expulsion pursued me like a specter. Every college application, every job interview, they didn't even need to mention it. I had seen it in their eyes. That, "What happened? Look." But now here I was, returned, in the belly of the beast. And then one afternoon, 2 weeks into the semester, one of my students stuck around after class. Quiet girl named Layla. Bright, curious, but reserved. She stood by the window as if attempting to gather the courage to speak with me. I asked her if she needed help with the assignment. She said, "No," then hesitated. Did you know a girl named Zoe Keller?" My heart accelerated. I hadn't heard that name in decades. "Yeah," I replied cautiously. "Why?" Layla looked down at the toes of her shoes. "She was my cousin." I stared at her. Zoe Keller. She was my classmate, same year. Shy student with restless hands and a hoodie that engulfed her. She just didn't show up one day. Rumor was she dropped out of school. Some said her family departed. No one actually inquired. I remember the last I saw of her, sitting alone in the library crying. But when I approached her and asked if she was okay, she shook her head and went away. Layla gazed up at me, glassy-eyed. "She died that year. Overdose." My throat tightened. I didn't know." She nodded. "No one speaks of her. But my aunt, her mother, was always telling me that the school knew she was bullied, that she complained about it. But nothing was ever done." My fingers went icy. "She complained to the school?" Layla nodded. "She went in twice. Once straight to Mr. Easton." I sat down, hard. My stomach was roiling. That couldn't have happened. I would have known about it. "Right. I'm only saying this because I overheard him speaking to you." Layla had murmured, "Just watch out. He lies." Those 3 words remained in my mind all day. He lies. I barely even heard the last bell ring. I just sat at my desk well past the time the hallways had cleared out, reliving every single thing since then. What if Zoe had said something? What if they just ignored her? What if they'd buried it? That night I started digging. I read after midnight through dusty school board minutes, newspaper clippings, anything that bore her name. Nothing clicked, as if she'd vanished. But the deeper I dug, the stronger I had this nagging, gut feeling. Something was covered up, and the person who covered it was still here, still shaking hands and making speeches and pretending to be concerned about children. But he didn't care about me, and he sure as hell didn't care about Zoe Keller. Now I had to make a choice. Do I just bury it, like everyone else? Or do I expose the truth and bring it to light, even if it means losing everything that I had regained? The next morning, I went into the building like entering a crime scene. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I couldn't help but wonder about Zoe, and how she must have walked these same halls, sat in these same disgusting orange chairs, with something so weighing on her shoulders that no one noticed. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. I couldn't help but keep repeating what Layla told me, that Zoe had filed the report, that Easton knew. I kept trying to remind myself that I couldn't guess, that maybe Layla was mistaken, that maybe her family was just angry and needed someone to be angry at. But deep down I knew like you know something awful before you have proof. I'd felt it in Easton's smile on the first day. It hadn't been a welcome, it had been a warning, so I started asking little questions. I wasn't reckless about it, just sneaky. I asked the librarian, Mrs. Cole, if she remembered Zoe Keller. Her lips compressed. Sweet girl, she said. She kept to herself. Why are you asking? I shrugged. One of my students mentioned her. Said she was her cousin. Mrs. Cole nodded slowly. That was a tough year. We lost some students. Zoe was one of them. I asked her if she knew why. She paused, as if considering her answer. I heard she was struggling. At home, mostly. But you know how it is. Sometimes people don't ask enough questions. And then she spun back to her desk and remained silent. The rest of the week, I ambushed Layla before class and asked if she had any message from Zoe. A journal, text, something. She shook her head. My aunt has some of her notebooks. I could ask. I asked her only if she was alright. She agreed. The next day, she handed me a plastic folder with 3 spiral notebook pages folded up inside. I waited until lunch to read them. I locked my classroom door, sat behind my desk, and opened the folder like it would explode. The writing was sloppy, rushed, as if Zoe was trembling in fear even as she wrote. The first page said, I told Mr. Easton what they did. I told him twice. He told me not to make trouble. He said it would blow over, that if I kept quiet, they'd leave me alone. But they didn't leave me alone. I had to put the paper down. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. I picked it up again and resumed reading. She named the boys, 3 of them, 2 of whom I knew, one a local policeman now, the other, a teacher in the district. My stomach churned. Zoe had begged for help, and Easton silenced her, told her to shut up, to not make trouble. He let them go on, and shortly enough afterward she was dead. I sat there for so long, just holding these pages, as if I was holding someone's last shriek, and then fear set in. What was I going to do with this? If I went to the school board, they'd close ranks. Easton had been here more than 20 years. He was a revered man, loved even. I was the new guy with a blot on my record. I already understood what that felt like. I already understood how fast people turn on you. I thought about quitting, just quitting, let someone else do it. But I thought about Zoe, crying in the library, and how I didn't go after her. I thought about Layla, believing in me, and I knew I couldn't quit this time, so I made a plan. I started documenting it all, copies of the notes, timelines, names, whatever I could piece together. I didn't trust the school's email system, so I used my own. I backed it up twice. I wasn't trying to go viral or blow it up on social media. I just wanted justice. Quiet, honest justice. The kind that tells the truth, even when it's hard. I called up an old buddy who was now a reporter. We hadn't talked for years, not since before the expulsion. I didn't even know if she would answer or not, but she did. Her name was Rachel, and once I told her that I had something significant, she offered to talk with me after work. We met at this little diner off the highway. I sat across from her, sipping cold coffee while she read Zoe's notes. She spoke little, just read and read. When she finally raised her eyes, they were bloodshot. You sure about this? She asked. If this gets out, it could get ugly. They're gonna cover for him. I nodded. I know, but someone should have covered for her. Rachel closed the folder deliberately. Alright, I'll investigate, but I'll require more. Documents, declarations, something tangible. I promised I'd get it. I didn't sleep much after that. I started waking up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing. Every morning reporting for school felt like stepping onto thin ice. I smiled at the children, taught my lessons, handed out pop quizzes, but underneath, I was disintegrating. I knew the instant the second Easton learned what I was doing, I'd be out of there, and not just fired, blacklisted. It would be made to appear as if I was resurrecting old falsehoods, like some disgruntled ex-student. But the worst of it wasn't the fear, the guilt. Guilt because I didn't know what Zoe was living with, because I hadn't stayed in touch with her that day, for not wondering more. Perhaps if I had, she would still be alive. Perhaps if someone had said something earlier, she would not have been alone when she died. Perhaps the entire school would not seem so like a cemetery with classroom desks. I didn't know how it would ever stop. I just knew I had to keep moving. For her. Undefined for Layla. Undefined for myself. Undefined because some truths don't remain buried. Undefined not forever. I was summoned into Easton's office one Thursday morning. The kind of morning that was already sweltering with heat. although it was still only 9 a.m. I knew the moment that I saw his assistant's strained smile that it wasn't just a quick check-in. I took a deep breath, straightened out my blouse, and went on in as if I didn't want to be sick. Easton sat behind his massive oak desk, fingers intertwined as if he were starting a sermon. "Sit down," he said too hearty. I sat. He eased forward a bit. "I've been hearing some interesting things." My throat tightened. "What about?" I asked, as if I didn't already suspect. "About you asking around, stirring up old ghosts, talking with students about personal matters." He smiled, but his eyes were sharp, hard. I didn't reply at once. I was attempting to remain composed on the outside, attempting not to allow him to see the panic eating at the edges of my ribs. He tapped his pen on the desk. "I understand your history here makes a unique perspective, but I wouldn't want that interfere with your professional judgment." That was it. The warning, coiled in the same fake charm he always employed, hiding behind pretended concern. I nodded very slowly. "I'll be careful," I said, though it tasted like acid. "I appreciate the criticism." He smiled once more. "Good. We're all here for the same reason, anyway, the students." I shifted back from my chair, trying not to shake. As I headed for the door, he told me, "You know, sometimes the past is better left where it is." I hadn't turned around to him. I just went on out and straight to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and wept. Not because I was scared, although I was, but because he still believed that he could get away with it. And maybe he did. I took my car out to Zoe's old neighborhood that weekend. I don't know what I was expecting. Something like closure, I guess. Her aunt lived in a small brick house on a quiet street, lawn overgrown, a tricycle resting on its side in the yard. She stood there in the doorway with tired eyes. When I told her my name, she didn't smile, but she opened the door a bit wider. "You're the teacher who talked to Layla," she said. I nodded. We sat at her kitchen table drinking instant coffee, the kind more like metal than beans. She talked about Zoe, how she'd sing little songs when she brushed her teeth, how she loved jelly beans but hated red ones, how she became withdrawn in 7th grade and never really came back. And then, with almost a whisper, she said, she told me what happened, about the boys, about going to the principal. She thought they'd help her. She thought people still did the right thing. Her voice broke, but then she stopped singing. I asked her if she ever complained, or if anyone ever checked up on her. She shook her head. They told me it was too late. No witnesses, no physical evidence, only her word against theirs. They told her they would handle it in-house. I knew what that implied. I sat there, my heart shattering all over again. "May I quote you?" I asked quietly. She glared at me for a long time before saying, "Only if you promise me this isn't about revenge. It's about her." I promised. On my way home, I called Rachel and told her what I had, a handwritten statement, family testimony, names. She told me to send the whole thing. I did, all the files. I sit here now, remembering sitting on my living room floor later, just staring at my inbox, thinking that I might have just gotten fired. Monday came and went as it always did, and part of me wished that maybe nothing would come of it. Maybe the truth would just drop gently, change everything inside out. I was wrong. Wednesday morning, I was summoned into the office once more. This time, it was the assistant superintendent in the doorway. A woman, Dr. Keller, not related. She was polite, professional, and cold. "We've heard you've made serious allegations against a member of this administration. Would you like to tell us?" I requested the right to have union representation. She nodded, but suggested, "You might consider resigning, quietly. It might save you a lot of trouble." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was all those years of being small, being afraid, being ignored. I returned her stare and said, "No, I won't be quiet this time." That night, the story published. Front page of the town's online newspaper. Principal overlooked harassment allegations from student who later died of overdose. Ex-student now teacher claims. Rachel did what she was supposed to do. No sensationalism, no baseless rumor-mongering, just facts. Direct quotations from Zoe's aunt. A scanned photocopy of the notebook page. Even a side-by-side photo of me as a student and me today. The response was immediate. Some were furious, accused me of attempting to ruin a man's reputation. Others shared it everywhere. Messages poured in. Former students, parents, even teachers at other schools. One said, "He ignored me too." Another said, "I always wondered what happened to Zoe." Thank you. But the biggest surprise came 2 days later, when Layla slipped me a crumpled piece of paper after school. All it said was, "Thank you for not letting them forget her." I kept that note in my wallet like armor, because even when the district opened an investigation and Easton was put on administrative leave, I knew it wasn't over. Not really. Guys like him didn't fall easily, but I was no longer afraid. I had been afraid for far too long. Now I had something stronger than fear. I had the truth, and I had a voice, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The investigation continued for weeks. Every morning, I went to school feeling like I was walking a tightrope, waiting for someone to yank the rope out from under me. Some of the teachers avoided me now, not openly, but you could feel it. The stony silence when I entered the break room, the lack of eye contact from anyone during meetings. One actually said to me, loudly enough for me to have heard, "Some people just love attention." I remained silent. I'd lost that version of me years ago. The one who needed approval, who needed everyone to love her. That girl was gone the moment I opened that folder full of notes in Zoe's hand. And what took her place? I have no idea, but she was improved. Tired but improved. Layla kept her head down when the piece came out, never spoke of it, and I never pushed her. But every so often, I'd catch her looking at me with this muted kind of respect in her eyes. And it mattered more than anything anyone ever said. One afternoon, the last week or so of the semester, she waited until the final bell, then came to my desk and said, "I think she would have liked you." I wasn't sure what to say, so I just smiled, with my tight throat, and replied, "I would have liked her too." And then she left, like that. I kept on teaching. I kept on coming. Even when I didn't sleep, even when the board held closed meetings about me, even when a concerned parent emailed the principal asking why we allow troublemakers to teach their kids. I came, because that's what Zoe didn't get to do. Because for every student in that classroom questioning whether the adults even see them, I wanted to be one of those people who does. The decision came down from the district just before winter break. Easton retired early. No apology issued. No show of remorse. Just a quiet resignation, a couple of carefully worded press releases, and an obit in the newsletter thanking him for years of service. It sickened me to read it. Then I got an email, a personal one, from one of the board members. She said, "You were heard. It mattered. It changed things." I had no idea if I should trust her. I still don't. But the reality was out now. It was not a rumor in a corridor or a scrawled name on a bathroom wall. It was real, recorded, recalled. Zoe's story couldn't be erased anymore. I got a note during break in my mailbox. Anonymous. Handwritten online paper. "I thought I was alone. I'm not anymore. Thank you." I kept reading it again and again, my eyes filling with tears. Not because someone had trusted me, but because someone was in need of me, and I had appeared. You know, people say the truth will set you free, but they never tell you how much it will cost you in the first place. The fear, the backlash, the way you start doubting everything about yourself, even your own recollections. But if I had to spin it on its head and do it all again, I would. Every tear, every sleepless night, every hard conversation, because silence never saved anyone. But truth, possibly did, really could. I had Zoe's notebook pages stored in a tiny box in my closet, not because I needed to remember the pain. I never will forget that. But because I needed to remember the choice. The choice to speak. The choice to stand, even when your knees are shaking. That's not what they teach you when you become a teacher. That sometimes, the most important thing you teach isn't in between the lines of a book. Sometimes it's just proving to a child their voice is heard, that they're invisible, that someone is not invisible, that someone will fight for them. I'm not a hero. I'm just a girl who went back to somewhere I should never have returned to, and found something worth coming back for. So yes, I was the girl who got expelled, but I'm also the woman who came back and told the truth. Undefined, and if that's the only legacy I leave here, then maybe that's enough.